Hey, in this demo, I'm going to teach you how to practice your scales with a metronome. Now, of course, you need a metronome, so you can go to Google, you can type in metronome, there you go. You could get a physical metronome. The ones that have the swinging arms are kind of cool, but for most people, you're going to probably get an app. So that's what I have here. I'm using an app called Practice Plus. I use an app called Tempo on my computer, so there's a bunch of them out there. You really shouldn't have to pay for one either. They're pretty simple, okay? Now, most metronomes have one major function. At the bottom, you're going to see a tempo number here. On mine it says 40 right now, and there's a plus and a minus. That's our tempo. That's the speed that we are going to be hearing clicks at, and it's measured in beats per minute. Okay, so 60 beats per minute is a beat every second, and then you can get faster or slower from there. Now, what we're going to do to start is we're going to pick a low tempo, like let's say 40 beats per minute, and we're going to do a slower practice, which will get us comfortable with playing the scale at a reasonable speed. So what I'm going to do, I have 40 beats per minute. It sounds like this. Okay. Now, I'm going to be playing the first position major scale on top of this. And when I'm playing, I'm going to first start by playing half notes. So I'm going to hold each note for 2 beats. So 1, 2, change, 3, 4, like that. So that's what I do to start. Take a listen. So that's how I would begin. I would maybe do that 1 or 2 times just to start my session out and get comfortable with using the scale that I'm going to play. Now, if when you're playing it doesn't sound like that, let's say you are really messy with your single notes. If that's what you're getting, then you need to slow down, fix your problem, stop the metronome, try to actually fix the mistake that you're making, and then try it again. So for a problem with single notes, I would form my embouchure over and over and take the harmonica away from my face like this. I do that a handful of times and go back to the metronome. If you're playing a scale that has bends and your bends are kind of shaky, it might be a good idea to work on your bends. Get out a bending tuner, maybe put on a drone track, work on your bends. Do that a little bit before jumping back into the scale because you want to be really consistent and accurate when you're playing the scale. That's the only way that you get really good is to hold yourself to a high standard of accuracy, even when you're doing something as simple as playing a scale at 40 beats per minute on half notes, okay? So we got to keep that level of consistency as we get faster because after we do 40, what we're going to do is we're going to bump it up to 60. And this time around, I would switch to doing quarter notes just because they're a little bit easier to keep track of. Here we go. Here's quarter notes at 60. Now, I would do that up and down a few times. Again, if I'm making mistakes with my single notes, I'd go and practice something to help you solve that problem, then come back to working on the scale. Same thing with bending or whatever thing that's holding you back from playing your scales nice and accurately. Okay, so we did it at 40 at half notes, then we moved up to 60 and we started doing quarter notes. Now from here, you would start increasing your metronome by 20 beats per minute or so, maybe 40 if you're a lot better, and see if you can keep up for a while and try to notice where your scale falls apart. So here's 80 beats per minute. That sounds pretty good. If it doesn't for you, again, fix things, work it out, then consider increasing your tempo. So I would just do this, increase your tempo by 20 beats per minute after every rep, and eventually you'll be going pretty fast. And I know scale practice seems kind of boring in the beginning, but as your metronome gets faster, it becomes very exhilarating, I think. It becomes a pretty big challenge for you to overcome, and that should be enough to keep you entertained. So here's like 180 as an example. Okay, so let's say you worked your way up to 180 and you weren't doing as well as I was doing. Let's say it was something like this. And that was it. And you gave your all and it was still kind of messy. Well, in that situation, I would lower your tempo on your metronome. So let's say go back down to 160 and try cleaning it up at a lower speed. If you could do it at the lower speed, try to raise it back up to the speed that you had trouble with. If you can't quite get that, maybe go slightly lower. Like right now I'm on 160. Let's say I could do 160. I couldn't do 180. Maybe I would try 170 and I would give that a shot. Okay, so that's metronome practice. It's really not terribly hard, but you got to do this on a regular basis to get all of the benefits from it, which is really being able to glide up and down your harmonica, playing all notes that work well together. Once you can do this, being able to improvise is just applying that skill to being able to play over music. It's not that big of a jump, but if you skip playing your scales, then everything that is even slightly more difficult on this instrument will seem even harder. So I really suggest that you take this seriously and do this about every day. Just to recap, when I'm starting to practice, I set my metronome to something like 40 beats per minute and I start playing slowly. I play half notes, okay? Maybe that's where I'm going to begin. Once I get comfortable with that and the notes are sounding pretty good, then I switch to 60 beats per minute and I start doing quarter notes. And I will do this with quarter notes. And if you play through the whole scale and everything sounds good, then increase the tempo. So 60 goes to 80 or 80 goes to 100. You just keep doing this until you just can't play it any longer. And once that's the case, you might want to take note of it, okay? You might want to say, okay, today I got to 180, or today I got to 180, but I couldn't really do it, so I had to slow down to 170. So 170 is where I'm ending. Something like that. When you take note of these things, if you return and try future scale practice sessions, you'll see the progress that you've made over time, which I think is pretty cool. So that's scale practice with a metronome. Definitely give this a shot.